edible food-inspired fragrances. There are a lot of kind of gourmand, sweet, edible smelling fragrances these days, especially in the modern perfume industry. And I've put together a few examples that I think are probably the most edible of all. Like, you really can just like feel like you just pick them up and eat them. And as always, everything that I mentioned will be available in the Amazon associate links down in the description below. I'm going to start with two, which I recently kind of discovered and figured out what they're all about. They are Kerosene Follow and Kerosene Followed. Both are coffee fragrances. So Follow is kind of like the more mild version of Followed, which is super intense, pretty sweet. It has some caramel notes, it has some vanilla, it has chocolate, and it has the coffee, obviously. So obviously it's very, very edible smelling, just like a sweet, sweet cup of coffee, just like stuffed with like coffee creamer and things like that. Then Follow, like I said, it is more of a mild version of that. It has a benzoin note, so it's a little bit more resinous, but still very, very edible smelling with that coffee note. It has some vanilla in it. I believe it even has a maple syrup note, if I remember correctly. But both of these are really, really authentic to the smell of real coffee. Like, you know, if someone wore this and walked past you, you would probably be confused into thinking that someone is brewing a cup of coffee somewhere nearby. But both of these, besides being very authentic to the smell of coffee and having that nice sweet note as well, they're just really reliable, good, well-performing fragrances. They both last a really long time. I would say 7 hours or more for both of them. Followed is even stronger. Maybe even 8 hours, but besides that, they're just well balanced. They're not too crazy. They're very simple fragrances. They don't even have that many notes. It's just really the coffee and then some sweet notes like the vanilla and the caramel. So very simple, but very effective. And of course, if you like the smell of coffee, then you're really gonna like either of these, which is, you know, nice because coffee is just generally a likable note, I think. So, you know, as long as you like coffee, you can't stray too far with these two options. Now, if you don't want to smell like coffee, you want to smell like something else, I will bring up one very popular option. Now, it's not my personal favorite, but I will admit that it does smell very edible, which is La Vie est Belle. So everyone knows this from La Gomme. Everyone knows this by now. This is kind of a super popular gourmand, very sweet type of fragrance. It has a very prominent note of vanilla. I believe there's some caramel thrown in there. There's like ripe fruit notes like blackcurrant and things like that. So this is hyper feminine, super modern, and super, super sweet. Now, kind of the downside of this right now is that it's very oversaturated. So there's a good chance if you wear this that you're gonna smell like several other people. But if you really, really like sweet, sugary fragrances, this will be up your alley. It's also extremely strong. I do not put on too much because you will regret it, even if you really like sweet fragrances. It is, I would say, 8-hour longevity or more, maybe even up to 10 hours. It is really, really intense. Maybe even a little too intense for its own good. But just in general, it is a reliable fragrance. You just gotta really make sure you like those really intense, sugary fragrances. And you have to keep in mind that, again, it is oversaturated at the moment. So just keep that in mind if you want to go for a more, maybe, unique scent. Now, in terms of unique scents, one of my favorites in terms of kind of edible fragrances, I really like Cherry Punk from Room 1015. This is really unique because one part of it smells really edible, the other part not so much. When you first put it on, it is the most cherry smelling thing you will ever smell, specifically cherry candy. Like when I smell it, it smells very much like some sort of gummy cherry fruit candy, you know, something like that. And really authentic too. It has that kind of sugary cherry sort of texture Then it really kind of flips around and becomes more of a smoky bonfire type of fragrance, which is very surprising because it does it very, very quickly. That cherry opening sticks around for about a minute, and then it abruptly shifts to the bonfire type of smell, which I really like. Now, when it does become more smoky, the cherry does still remain. It doesn't go away completely. It's just more of something to smooth out that smoky note that it has. Now, the edible part obviously is the kind of cherry candy note that it has. Although the smoky note is kind of reminiscent of like maybe you're grilling something or you're cooking something over an open fire. It has a very toasty, warm, fiery sort of element to it. So this is kind of an edible fragrance in a different sense of the word. It's not just purely dessert, sugary, like La Vie est Belle. This is a little bit of a different sort of thing here. And I would say better for those who want to, something sweet but not too sweet and grounded with a more kind of earthy, heavy, smoky type of note. But I always like wearing this. It's just a fun type of fragrance to wear, especially if you like the scent of cherries and smoke, which is not a common combination, but it actually works surprisingly well. Now, another one that I have, which is also pretty edible smelling, this is from Montserrat, Roses and Chocolate. Obviously, this is, a chocolate type of fragrance. Now, a lot of fragrances, I would say, first of all, chocolate is not a very popular note in fragrances in general. And second of all, when there is chocolate in a fragrance, it's usually not that great smelling. It's just kind of strange smelling, or at least I think so. This actually does it pretty well. I think it has a pretty good, smooth chocolate type of scent to it, and blending it with the rose note, it makes it even smoother, even sweeter, more kind of delectable and attractive. So this is a really good chocolate option if you're going for that. You just like the chocolate note. Also, it's a pretty good performer. It's actually much stronger than you would expect. Good longevity, good projection. It's really going to stick to your skin. And while it is pretty sweet, it's not crazy sweet. Again, not on La Vie est Belle levels of sweet. But in general, it is just kind of well balanced, an attractive type of scent, and obviously roses and chocolate. It's kind of reminiscent of like a Valentine's Day sort of thing. So, keeping all that in mind, this is a very nice type of fragrance if you want to do something a little bit different. And that's pretty much my list of edible smelling fragrances. So if you found this video helpful, of course leave a like and maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.